Okay, I'm going to get started only because there's so much to cover here, and I don't want to run over time. Again, this is the seminar about the CASPER and the preview exam. It is a PAP 1003 seminar, which means that there is a reflection statement that is required to be submitted. I can share the link to the reflection statement at the end of the seminar. But right now, I just want to focus on presenting and getting through the slides. Okay. All right, so there are two situational judgment tests for medical school. The more common one that most medical school students or applicants take is the CASPER exam. That is administered by a private company called Acuity Insights. It's a Canadian-based company. It was formerly called Altus Assessments. And that company is in charge of administering the exam. You register directly with Acuity Insights, and the company is the ones who distribute your test score to the medical schools. You list on your registration exam, your registration form to take the exam. The other test is one that is administered by the AAMC, and that's called the preview exam. I'm going to go through both exams and tell you everything you need to know about them. Not all schools require preview. We do ask all applicants to take CASPER because most medical schools either recommend it or require it. In terms of preview, after you set up your school list, you can go and see if the preview exam is recommended to be taken, and then you can register for that. So what is CASPER? It's an online open response with what they call a situational judgment test. What does that mean? It means you are asked what you would do in a tough situation, and more importantly, why. CASPER stands for Computer-Based Assessment for Sampling Personal Characteristics. Okay, it's not exactly as it translates to CASPER, but that's what it stands for. It's specifically looking at 10 different competencies: collaboration, communication, empathy, equity, ethics, motivation, problem solving, professionalism, resilience, and self-awareness. What is being assessed? Basically, your social intelligence, your professionalism. And when presented with a difficult situation, you have to indicate how you would respond, as well as justify why you would respond that way. Okay? And as I mentioned, there are 54 plus MD and DO schools that require CASPER. CASPER is also required by dental programs, optometry programs, PA programs, and vet med programs. So you will be preparing for and taking CASPER. When do you take the exam? Since the CASPER exam is used in connection with the review of your application, you should register for and take the exam in April or May before submitting your applications in June. It takes about 4 to 5 weeks after you take the exam for your score to be sent to the medical schools on your list. You can register now. You can set up an account on Acuity Insights, and you can register now for your date. The same CASPER exam is sent to both MD and DO programs. So you do not need to take a different exam for DO programs. Your score, as I mentioned, is submitted to the schools you listed within 4 to 5 weeks after your exam date. And you want to make sure you check the requirements of the schools you're applying to and when to take that exam. So they made some changes this year to CASPER. They shortened the exam, which is good for you. The length of the exam is 65 to 85 minutes, but that includes, mandatory system. The 85 minutes includes the mandatory systems check and the introduction. Then there's 65 minutes of questions and answers and 2 breaks. The total number of scenarios has been reduced, I think, from 14 down to 11. And there are 2 different types of response sections. First, the first section, you are going to video record your response, okay? And then the second section will be a typed response, okay? There is an optional 10-minute break before the typed response section and an additional 5-minute break halfway through the typed section. And during the break, you can get up and stretch, you can get a snack, go to the bathroom, but you must carefully manage your time. So the first section has 4 scenarios in which you are going to video record your response. The first 2 scenarios, you're going to read, they're text-based scenarios, okay? And then the next 2 scenarios, you're going to watch a short video and then respond with your video. You have 30 seconds to reflect on the scenario, and then each scenario is followed by 2 open-ended questions presented one at a time. So you have 10 seconds to read the question, then you're going to have a 1 minute per question to video record your response. You are able to take notes on a piece of paper, but once your minute is up, your response is automatically uploaded and you're not able to watch the recording or change your answer, okay? It's very important for this exam to have a working webcam for the video response section as well as for the remote test monitor. So just some tips, as with any online test or interview, you want to take it in a place that's free from disruptions. You want to make sure that the lighting is good. You want to dress professionally. That doesn't mean you have to wear a suit, but look, polished. You have to take CASPER on a laptop. You cannot take it on a tablet or cell phone. And if you use headphones, according to the staff at Acuity Insights, it's best not to use the wireless buds because of technical issues in terms of the sound when you're video recording your responses. So make sure to speak clearly and look at the camera. So moving on to the second section, you are going to type your response. It's 7 typed responses. You have first 3 scenarios that you're going to read and then type your response, and then 4 scenarios that you're going to watch. They're video-based scenarios, and then you again type your response. For the typed responses, you're going to have 2 open-ended questions, but instead of appearing one at a time, they're presented together. And then together, to answer both questions, you're going to have 3.5 minutes, which is not very long, to type your 2 responses before being automatically directed to the next section. If you submit your answers before the 3.5 minutes are up or your timer runs out, your responses are saved and uploaded automatically, but you cannot go back and change those responses. So in terms of scoring, each section is scored on a scale of 1 to 9, with 9 being the highest. The raters for each scenario are not provided with an answer key, but they're just given general information about what central concepts and ideas are essential to each scenario. The raters are apparently well trained in this position, with bias training, etc. And also for each response, okay, each response to both the video section and the type section, you are going to have a different rater. Okay, so that means you have 11 different raters, one for each one of your responses. And grammar and spelling are not rated. It's really the content of your response that is what is being looked at. Now, neither your written nor your video responses will be shared with your chosen schools. Only your CASPER score for both sections of the exam will be sent out to the programs you indicated within 4 to 5 weeks after your test date. Now, how do you know how you did? So interestingly, you don't get a numerical score with a breakdown by section. The only thing that you are told is what quartile range your test performance demonstrated, okay? If you land in the 4th quartile, that really is the highest and best quartile to land, since you are in the top 25% of all test takers. On average, students get a 6.5 to 7.5 averaged across all sections. That's out of 9 being the highest. A 3rd quartile score means that while 25% of test takers were rated higher than you still rated higher than 50% of the test takers. So all the test scores are processed and distributed directly to programs as a group. Your CASPER score will be made available to the programs on your distribution list, as I mentioned, within 4 to 5 weeks following your exam date. When you register for the exam, you're going to create that distribution list of the programs that you want your score sent to. You can go back into your account and add more schools to the list later, but you have to add at least one school when you register. Now, you're not going to receive an email stating that your scores have been delivered to the programs on your distribution list. What you need to do is go back to the reservation section of your Acuity Insights account, and then you're going to see something that says completed, results delivered, to indicate that your score has been delivered. If you see completed results pending, your CASPER score has not yet been delivered. If you check the portals of the schools that you apply to, it doesn't always necessarily show up right then as well. Like, so it could say completed results delivered in your reservation section on Acuity Insights, but it may take some additional time for the programs where the scores were sent to update the information in their portals. So just, be aware of that. Okay, so in terms of registering for the exam, you can register, up to 3 days prior, but the best thing to do is register as early as you can. Each school will have its own deadline, and you can read about those on the programs list in the Acuity Insights account you're going to set up. In order to register, you are going to have government issued photo ID, a valid email address, a working webcam, a working microphone. The test costs $85 to take, which also covers sending your score to 7 programs. And for each program that you want your score sent to after the first 7, there is an additional charge of $18, okay? You have to make payment with a valid credit card. Cash and debit cards are not accepted. If you qualify for FAP, then these CASPER fees are waived. More about registration. So when you go to the Acuity Insights website, the homepage at the bottom on the left, you're going to see a resource box. You can click on the dates and fees tab, and you will need your AAMC number. So you have to create that number if or your AMCAS ID. But if you've taken the MCAT or you registered to take the MCAT, then you will have that AAMC number. You have to select your country, your time zone, your program, because this exam is actually given globally, and it's given to students who are applying to medical schools, all over the world. So you have to be very specific. It's also extremely important that you select the correct application cycle. Okay, because the exam is only going to be valid for that cycle. Okay, so if you are applying in June 2025, it's critical that you indicate you choose the 25-26 cycle. That means you're applying in June 2025 and you're going to start medical school in 2026. Okay, but make sure you include the correct cycle, because again, that exam is only valid for that cycle. You have to list at least one school to register for the exam, but you can always go back and add more schools to your list. Now, CASPER scores are valid for only 12 months. And this is a one-shot per cycle exam, meaning you cannot register for and take the exam more than once during an application cycle. If you are a reapplicant or you decide to postpone your application, you're going to need to take the CASPER exam again. Okay, so, that's a lot to take in, but just know that CASPER is one of many factors in terms of looking at your overall application that they will consider, okay? Each program is going to have a different weight for the CASPER exam. So, of course, you want to do well in all aspects of your application, but I want you to put this in perspective. You're going to do the best you can, and then you're going to let it go, okay? Because this is only one small aspect of your overall application, okay? And it's perfectly normal to be mid-sentence and then to be cut off when you're trying to answer a response, or even mid-sentence when you're trying to finish up something, a typed response. These things happen all the time. You do your best to get your full response down, or your full, video response recorded, and then you move on. Okay, you collect yourself and you move on. All right, so let me talk a little bit about how to prepare. So although, there are some who say, look, this is not a cognitive-based test. It's not like the MCAT where you have to really study all the content. This is really testing your maturity and professionalism. So really, there's not too much prep that is required. There are definitely things you can do and should do to prepare. Obviously, the first thing is make sure that your computer webcam and the microphone are working on the computer you will be using on test day. This is really, really important because there may be technical issues and you can get support, but certain things like, your microphone, your webcam, those need to be functioning. Now, I cannot stress enough, take the free CASPER exam. It is offered on the Acuity Insights website. It's important to become familiar with the question formatting, the timing, and the pacing. You can even take the practice exam even before you register for the exam, okay? And you can take it as many times as you like in order to feel comfortable with the format. So that you must do in order to really understand the flow of the exam, what's expected of you, how to feel comfortable when you're doing it. So I hope that you all really take advantage of that practice exam. Again, completing your responses to the questions within 3.5 minutes, even though it used to be 3 questions, now it's 2 questions. You used to have 3 questions in 5 minutes. Now they shortened it to 2 questions in 3.5 minutes. Now, although your spelling and grammar aren't scored, you're going to need to be typing very quickly. So what does that mean? If you're not a fast typer, then I would work on your typing speed, because that will be important. And I have had students who've taken the exam in the past who said one of the reasons they felt they struggled with CASPER was that they were not fast typers, and they really struggled to get their answers down within the time limit. Also, review MMI practice materials, because it's a lot of the same skills, right? In terms of how you're going to think about these ethical scenarios. So, go online, go to Shamasian Consulting, go to the Savvy Pre-Med, and really make sure to become comfortable with MMI type prompts and how to respond to them. You also want to read up on relevant topics regarding ethical decision-making, conflict resolution, medical ethics, problem solving, and mediation, okay? Be comfortable and know about the 4 pillars of medical ethics. Patient autonomy, the concept of beneficence, or the physician's duty to do good for the patients, the principle of non-maleficence, that it's the duty of the physician, the ethical duty to not do any undue harm to the patient, and the concept of justice, which not only subsumes following the law, but also things like how do we allocate scarce resources, and how do we provide medical care on an equitable basis, okay? So become familiar now with all of these things, and there's another book that I'm going to talk about when I do specifically the seminar on the multiple mini interview, but there is a book by Dr. Desai, Desai, that involves winning strategies for the MMI, and that's another great resource for you. All right. So I'm going to move on now to some practice questions and how you're going to go about answering them. Okay, so the first one is, you are an employee at a retail store and you overhear an interaction between a customer and another employee at the cash register. The customer is here to return an item. However, she does not have a receipt for the purchased item and claims to have paid in cash. Despite assurances by the customer that she did buy the item at your store, your colleague informs the customer that while she can provide store credit or in exchange, store policy does not allow refunds of more than $20 without a receipt. The customer informs your colleague that she really needs a refund, given that this was a birthday purchase for her daughter, but now she desperately requires the money to buy her daughter's prescription medication. While the manager can override the store policy, she is away until next week. Your colleague turns to you for advice, given that you have been working at the store for longer than she has. Okay, so there is the scenario. The first question is, what do you tell the other employee? Go ahead and give the refund or abide by store policy. And here you're asked to justify your answer. So you want to, start by identifying the issues and the stakeholders here, gathering more information about the situation. If you can speak about this in an if this, then this way in terms of going about your analysis, that is helpful. And then you need to come to a conclusion. So, what do you tell the other employee? Go ahead and give the refund or abide by store policy. Again, you're going to you're going to type all of this out. You're going to recognize and demonstrate your concern for the customer's need for cash for her child's medication, and balancing that with upholding store policy regarding cash refunds. You can then proceed to gather more information. You can express appreciation for the customer's patience and speak to the customer in a non-confrontational and non-judgmental manner, maybe even taking them to a private place to talk to them, if you can take a break from your position at the register. Demonstrate understanding, or if you're not at the register and you're just asked to, help out, this is what you would be advising. Demonstrate understanding of the difficult situation she is in by actively listening to her and acknowledging her concerns. Take the conversation to a private place with the other employee, and or the customer, to avoid embarrassing the customer or making her feel uncomfortable. Of course, ask questions to learn when the customer bought the item and determine whether the merchandise is from your store. Review the store policy on refunds to see if there are any exceptions. So these are all parts of what you would do to gather more information. And then you can review these options, and if this, then this way. If the policy upon review allows you to process the return for cash, then you will provide the customer with a refund. But if the policy does not allow for a cash refund, then you're going to have to advise the other employee to sincerely apologize to the customer and try to assist them the best you can. So there will be tough situations like that. Then there may be a follow-up second question. These both will appear at the same time. Assume you advise the newer employee not to give the refund, but she does anyway. Do you report this to your manager? Why or why not? Again, what are the issues presented? Try to gather more information. State your options and choose one. I'm sorry, is there a hand up?
Yes, Nina, it's my hand. Hello. I was
Hi.
just wondering if I was able to ask a question concerning question one.
Sure.
Okay, perfect. Wait, let me just lower my hand. So say that, so upon reading it, I would have answered differently. So I would have asked to pull the other coworker aside, and see possibly if we can call either a manager from a different location or a manager, like say the district manager who's above the other
Yeah, I
manager.
mean, and
But
all there
within the
is,
question,
yeah, that's
oh, okay,
fine.
so it's not black
I
and
mean,
white.
there's no one right or wrong response. And
Oh, okay. I thought
you
like there
know,
there
you
were.
can be very creative in your responses. You can think of other ways.
Okay.
And if that's possible and that's an option, then you can certainly present that.
Okay. I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure it wasn't a black and white yes or no. Okay,
No,
perfect.
no,
Thank
there's
you.
definitely more than one way you can answer these questions. The same when you have your multiple mini interviews and you're presented with a scenario. There's more than one way. there are certain, as I mentioned, certain competencies that they're looking for, as I mentioned in the beginning, but your response can be very different from, someone else, as long as you're overall demonstrating your sort of social intelligence and your professionalism in your response, and you're really focusing on those competencies that they're looking at. Okay? I hope that answered it.
It
Okay.
did, thank you.
Yeah, okay. So here, it's what are they looking for? Your duty to uphold store policy versus the desire to maintain good relations with your fellow employee, as well as the need to consider fairness to all customers. It's probably just not just or fair to favor some customers over others. You may want to speak to the newer employee, give them the chance to explain the reasons for giving the refund against your advice. Speak to them in a private place so they don't feel like they're being put on the defensive, that they have a chance to really explain why they did what they did. And, again, it's about stating your options and choosing one. If it is clear that the store policy was not followed, you would want to make that clear to your colleague and give them the opportunity to do the right thing and report their actions to the manager. But, if they refuse to report their actions, despite your efforts to encourage them and own up about the situation, then it would be your responsibility to report this to the manager in order to uphold store policy, because you have knowledge of what happened here. And again, there may be, other things you could consider when looking at this, but this is just one possible way you could, decide. But I think at the end of the day, what they're looking for is that you would follow store policy and you would report this to the manager in furtherance of upholding store policy, while still, giving time to the newer employee to explain themselves, to not put them in a, not be confrontational, certainly around other customers, and to try to understand why they did what they did. Okay. Okay, another prompt. So sometimes it's not just like a story, it could be just even a quote, right? So this is a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King: "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. All men are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." Okay? And you can read the quote several times, make sure you understand it. And then here, the first question is, can you reflect on a time when this quotation was relevant in your own life? Okay, so here it's asking you to look at your life experiences to answer this question. Think about a time you witnessed someone being treated unfairly. Did you do anything to call out the injustice? Did you advocate for an individual or maybe a group? Or maybe you took part in an organization that was formed to advocate against an injustice aimed at a particular group. And, how have you acted for others who have been treated unfairly? Okay. How does this question relate to your desired field? So this is, more focused here on medicine or dentistry. I mean, there are injustices in the provision of patient care. So you want to make sure you reflect upon your responsibility to take a stand when you witness injustice in healthcare. How have you recognized these injustices? How do you plan to advocate for those impacted by the health inequities through your career in healthcare? So these are just examples. When you take the actual practice exam that is provided on the Acuity Insights site. You'll see additional scenarios that are possible scenarios. Obviously, the practice exam will be different from your actual exam, but it will allow you to become familiar with the types of questions that are going to be asked. Some additional pointers: you want to be prepared to share personal stories. You want to focus on lessons learned. It's helpful if you use the full time allotted to express your justification for your response, and there will be a little sort of clock at the bottom of the screen so you can see, you know, how much time you have left. As I mentioned before, you know, there's this mindset prep, right? It's okay if you do not finish a thought or a sentence, right? You have 5 seconds left and you're just typing away to finish your thought. You're not going to be penalized for this. I apologize for the incoming call. Hold on a second.
Call from the wireless account.
So, you know, you want to make sure to take a deep breath and refocus so you can do the best on the next scenario, right? So just readjust yourself. Remember, there's going to be a different rater for each scenario. So that's a good thing. Let's see here. So again, there are a lot of YouTube samples that you can look at for video questions online and how you can deal with those. So I wait. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry. And you can review sample, and you should review the sample questions, video questions that are provided on YouTube, because they're also very helpful. So just use every resource. If nothing else, use the practice exam on the Acuity Insights site, use the YouTube videos that are available to you, use MMI resources, and, you know, if you need to work on your typing, then do that. But all of those resources will provide you with excellent preparation. In addition to the CASPER exam, part of this Acuity Insight assessment also contains something called Duet. Duet is a value-aligned assessment that compares what you value most in a medical school program with what the medical school programs have to offer. So together with the CASPER exam, the additional component provides a more complete picture of who you are to admissions committees. Some programs do require Duet in addition to the CASPER exam, so you just make sure you check the websites of the programs that you plan to apply to. You don't have to complete Duet at the same day, at the same time that you're taking your CASPER exam, but it is recommended that you complete it within 14 days of taking your CASPER exam to ensure that they are both available together to be considered by the programs on your list, okay? There's really no way to prepare for Duet per se, other than to try to look at what the programs you're applying to value and to see if you align with those values. So it takes between 10 and 15 minutes to complete. There's no additional fee for this section. The Duet scores are automatically generated based on the alignment between your rankings and those of the programs to which you're applying. Look at the schools that you are interested in attending. You know, you should trust your intuition when making your choices of what is important to you, but you also should be familiar with the programs that you are interested in and what they value. When you're taking Duet, you can only go back and change the answer to the question immediately preceding the one you're working on. After that, the answers are automatically saved, okay? So again, this is just one of many aspects of the application. You know, it if you don't, or if you're not aligned perfectly, perfect duet with the programs that you're, applying to, it's not the end of the world. I think you just have to trust your intuition on this. The one other thing I'm going to talk about, but I'll talk about that later. So in terms of technical issues, there is a support team that can assist you, but again, it is your responsibility to ensure that your laptop or desktop computer is working properly, meaning strong internet, working microphone, working webcam. Double check your browser permissions to ensure you've been allowed access to your microphone and webcam. And I'll tell you more about the technical requirements that you're going to need here. So, the Safari browser will not support CASPER. You have to use either Chrome or Firefox. You need to disable VPNs, firewalls, and any sort of browser plugins. You have to complete the system's requirements check before starting the exam to make sure that everything is working. If for some reason there's an emergency, you're in a building and the fire alarm goes off and you have to evacuate while you're taking the exam, or there's some other emergency or technical issue while taking the exam, things happen. We realize that they recommend using the chat bubble to alert the support team as opposed to emailing them. There is no phone assistance line. You can reschedule your exam without charge at least 31 days in advance. And there's no limit on the number of times you can reschedule. Okay, if you reschedule less than 31 days before the exam date, you do need to pay $20 unless you have the FAP or you have a verified medical issue. Okay, so there is that support. In terms of duet, really, there's no practice component for this, right? It's just a measure of your own personal values and preferences. You just want to make sure to read the instructions carefully, as well as the characteristics and their definitions before proceeding to the comparison pages. And I think that's really going to be the most important. So you take your time and really understand what they're referring to. And once you are in the comparison pages, you go with your gut. There's really no right or wrong answer. On test day, as I mentioned before, you're going to have to take the CASPER system requirements check. And that's going to be found on your reservations page in the location where you're going to take the exam. You need, as I mentioned, you have to have an up-to-date version of Chrome or Firefox. It is recommended to restart your computer to close all other applications. You need a private browser, and you have to disable any firewall or pop-up blockers, plugins, extensions. You have to deactivate your VPN, and you log into your Acuity Insights account approximately 30 minutes before your scheduled test time. And obviously the webcam is a strict requirement as part of the identity methods, and it has to be active, uncovered, and facing towards you throughout the duration of your test, because there is, a virtual monitor. Okay. You're going to want to log in approximately 30 minutes before your scheduled test time. So, make sure you plan. Make sure you do what's necessary so you're not running around the day of your exam to get into a location where you can take it. Go to the testing page. Wait, there is a countdown timer. And then once that expires, you can click the start button, and that's going to appear after the countdown timer runs down, and then you can start your test. Just know that you only have 15 minutes to click the start button. So if you get an important phone call or there's some other thing that happens, you may need to reschedule, because after that, you will have to reschedule to a future test date. This I really, really recommend to everyone is here. If you go to the Acuity Insights website, there is a FAQ page, which is extremely helpful. The other thing that is an absolute must, there was a recorded webinar that was given on February 18th, which talks about everything you need to know about the 25-26 CASPER exam. Please watch that recorded webinar. It may repeat a lot of the information that I included here in this seminar, but believe me, it is worth watching, okay? It is one of the most important ways to prepare for the exam. I think you just, when you click on the recording, it asks you to like put in an email, and just, then they send you the recording link and you can watch it. It's very easy to access. Okay. Questions on CASPER before I move on to preview? Hands up, anyone? Okay, I'm gonna move on. It's already 3:16 and I have preview to get through. All right. The PRE in preview stands for Professional Readiness Exam. And this is a situational judgment test that is administered by the AAMC. It was previously called the AAMC Situational Judgment Test. Now it's called Preview. Just a little bit of history here. CASPER came up with this exam. The AAMC said, what? How can this private company, make all this money with this exam? We should be able to have an exam that is required by the medical schools within AMCAS, and they came up with their own exam. Point of fact is that the CASPER exam is really much more popular among health professions programs than Preview, but the AAMC every year still tries to make this exam more popular among and required or recommended by more medical schools. So it still is out there. And it's unfortunate because it just means another exam that you guys would possibly have to take. But it's just all about the AAMC trying to capitalize on this opportunity, and they were hoping to build a more of a following among the medical schools that would require this test instead of CASPER, but it hasn't really turned out that way. The AAMC Preview, as I mentioned, is just another situational judgment test. It presents a series of hypothetical scenarios, and it really focuses on things you might encounter in medical school. And it's going to ask you to evaluate the effectiveness of the responses to each scenario. Okay, so right now, there may be more added before, right in the spring, but these are the schools that do recommend or require Preview. And you'll also find that too, because when you go to the websites of the medical schools you're applying to, it will say, admission requirements, and it will recommend or require Preview or CASPER. Okay. Now, there are 8 core AAMC pre-professional competencies for entering medical students that this exam is focused on. Service orientation, social skills, cultural competence, teamwork, ethical responsibility to self and others, reliability and dependability, resilience and adaptability, and capacity for improvement. If you have not done so already, and I do recommend this to every student I work with, go to the AAMC, read the PDF document, called Anatomy of an Applicant. In that PDF, they will detail for you all 17 pre-medical competencies, including the ones listed here, and define for you what they mean. Okay, so the preview, so this is a mistake here. I should have changed the heading here. This is the testing schedule for 2025, not 2024. The exam is going to be offered in 7 testing windows across 14 dates. Appointments are available throughout each test day beginning at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, but registration is through the AAMC site, and it should be done early as spots fill up, especially for the March, April, and June test dates. The cost is $100 to take the exam, which covers sending your score to an unlimited number of programs. Now remember, the programs are the AAMC programs, that meaning through AMCAS. So this is not a test that will be required by an osteopathic medical school program or any other program, dental school or PA, etc. This is for students applying on AMCAS. If you have FAP, that fee is waived. As I mentioned, exam times, you can sign up for an 8 a.m. time. You can even, sign up for a late night time because it's given through 1 a.m. Eastern Time. Appointments are offered every 15 minutes, and each test date has a limited number of available appointments. Pre-registration is required. Individual test dates and appointment times are available on a first-come, first-served basis until they reach capacity. Therefore, it really is important that you register as early as possible to have the best opportunity to choose your preferred test date and time slot. We advise, so if you go to the AAMC, this site here at the bottom, you can read about all the different 7 windows that you can take the exam, the 14 dates available. We recommend that you take the exam in the first, second, or third window. The first test dates are April 2nd and 3rd. You can register now. That registration closes on March 19th, and then the scores would be released on April 29th. Then there's May 6th and 7th. That registration is now open, closes on April 22nd, and scores are released on June 12th. And June 4th and 5th, registration's open, closes on May 21st, and scores are released on July 9th. After that, it really gets very late, and they want to be able to look at this exam together with your application. But again, it's going to be just one of many things that they look at when they look at your overall application. Okay. Unlike the CASPER exam, you can take preview a second time during an application cycle, okay? And if you have FAP, the cost will only be $50 to take it again. There is a lifetime limit of 4 times for taking the preview exam. The hope is you won't have to retake it, but if for some reason you took it for the first time and you were just not feeling right, and you want to retake it because you feel you can do better, that is okay. So again, check the websites of the medical schools that you plan to apply to determine if it's required or recommended for admission. As I mentioned before, this is one of many factors that will be considered in the review of your application, but it can be viewed as a plus factor. It takes approximately 75 minutes to complete. You take it at home or in, a location where you have a quiet place free from distractions. There is a live remote individual proctor for each exam that you actually can contact if you have technical issues. This exam can only be taken on a desktop computer or a laptop. It can't be taken on your cell phone or tablet. So, how does the exam work? You are presented with 30 different scenario sets. Each scenario is followed by a series of possible responses, okay? Now, unlike CASPER, you are not video recording your responses, and you're not typing your responses, okay? You're really just determining with respect to each response, you're rating each response. So each scenario is one short little paragraph describing a situation that a medical student could encounter during medical school. The responses represent a range of possible actions that someone could take to the situation presented. And then you're going to need to rate each response to the scenario according to a range of options, which I will review. As I mentioned before, there's no typing, there's no video response. And you're going to be rating the effectiveness of each one of these possible answers that they present you with on a 4-point scale as either 1, very ineffective, 2, ineffective, 3, effective, and 4, very effective. Now, they do define what they mean by each of these terms. And, for each scenario, you're going to play the role of a medical student. So it's not in one scenario, you're going to be a doctor, in another, a patient, in another, a parent. You're always going to be a medical student. And you're going to be asked to rate the effectiveness of each response on this 4-point scale. Very ineffective is defined as meaning that the response would cause additional problems or possibly make the situation worse. Ineffective means the response will not improve the situation, and also may cause a problem. Effective means the response could help, but would not significantly improve the situation. And very effective means the response will significantly improve the situation. Okay, so you're going to become comfortable with, what each one of these responses means. There is a free preview prep booklet with a full-length practice exam. Please take advantage of it. There are specific instructions for how to rate each response, and you can go back and review the instructions if you need to, okay? Obviously, it's best to prepare in advance so you don't need to go back and review the different ratings and what they mean when you're taking the exam. Okay, so try to, do your best to prepare. You're going to receive a single total score for the entire exam, not a quartile. The score will range from 1, which is the lowest, to 9, which is the highest. And you're going to be evaluated based on how well your responses, meaning the 1 to 4 effectiveness rankings you assign each response, match what the medical educators have met and conferred and think would be the best response to those scenarios that you're presented with. Full credit is awarded if your response matches the medical educator's response, while partial credit is awarded if your response is close. So for instance, if they thought a particular response was effective and you put very effective, it's likely that you're going to be getting partial credit for that response. There are multiple AAMC preview exam formats, and there will be variations between question sets that, each student gets. All exam forms are meant to assess the same qualities and behaviors, but each form is different in specific items it presents. There is a conversion system, because there are different exams, they have a conversion system called equating, which is applied to turn the raw scores to scaled scores to compensate for small variations in difficulty between test forms. The preview exam scores are final. They cannot be appealed. And that's really the same for CASPER as well. If you feel like something really was wrong in the way that exam was scored. Unfortunately, it's a final score, and you can't appeal it. The previous scores are released approximately 30 days after the exam date. You do get a total score, a confidence band, and a percentile range. You're going to select the schools to receive your score report, and then they send your scores directly to the schools you indicate. You can take the preview exam twice per application cycle. Okay, in terms of accommodations, unless you've been like pre-approved for like special accommodations where you can get up and walk around or take any other extra time, the AAMC does require that you remain in your seat for the duration of the exam. Taking a break, standing up, or in any way leaving your seat will result in possible AAMC action. You have to remain silent during the entire exam. You can't read the questions out loud or speak to yourself. Leaving your seat or speaking during the exam may result in investigation. Why? They think maybe there's someone, helping you from the corner or someone listening in. It's just tremendous security. And I'm sure those of you who've taken the MCAT already know what that's like. When you take the test, make sure you're in a private, well-lit room. You have to clear your workspace. So if you are at a messy desk or a messy table, you're going to have to move everything out. And they actually ask you to take your laptop and walk around so they can see what's in your room, again, for security purposes. You have to close all other programs on your computer and remove any additional monitors from the room, as dual monitors are not allowed during the exam. You also need a valid ID to take the exam. Make sure your name on your ID and the first and last names you entered in your AAMC ID match, okay? So most common IDs that are accepted are a state driver's license and a passport, but please go onto the AAMC website and ensure that your ID meets the exam day requirements so you don't have an issue with taking the exam that you registered for. There are additional steps you're going to need to take to allow the proctor into your laptop, downloading the ProctorU browser. As I mentioned, there will be a real-life proctor present that you can communicate with. They disappear from your view so as not to distract you when you're taking the exam, but just know that they're watching. So you cannot do anything that would make them question your integrity when you're taking the exam, or they might interrupt and ask for clarification of your activity, and if necessary, terminate your exam if they think that these actions are causing you to have some sort of advantage, or they think in any way that you're cheating. Okay. And then, these are additional things you have to do to allow the proctor in. And, if you do run into technical problems, you are able to connect with that proctor, and there is live support. So someone can get to you right away and assist you. All right. Now let's just kind of talk about how to assess the responses. So your role here is going to be that of a medical student. You want to identify the most pressing issue in the scenario, so try the best you can to identify the vulnerable party. As a future physician, you're going to always have to prioritize the well-being of those under your care. At the same time, however, you have to remain non-judgmental to all parties involved. So you want to read each response and examine whether that response really takes care of the vulnerable party, whether it stays non-judgmental towards all involved parties, and whether it is within the ethical and legal boundaries of your situation. So if you give a high rating to a score, to a response that includes a dismissive attitude or indifference or rash judgment or violence or outright conflict, it's not going to result in a high score. And before you rate the responses, really make sure you read that scenario and each response very carefully, okay? Remember, each scenario can have more than one possible effective or ineffective response, okay? But you must use your judgment to evaluate which of the responses is more or less effective. Each scenario may include several effective and ineffective responses, and you can assign the same rating to as many responses as you see fit. Okay, here's an example. During class, your professor observes you participating in a role play exercise with one of your classmates. You are acting as a doctor, and your classmate is acting as an angry patient. The role play is tense, but stays on course. You think you performed well, but after class, your classmate gives you unexpected negative feedback that you missed several opportunities to comfort the patient and calm the situation. You're now expected to attend a debriefing session with your professor and classmate. Please rate the effectiveness of each response to this situation. So here are the various possible responses, and you're going to have to rate each one as very ineffective, effective, or very effective. Tell your classmate that only the professor is qualified to provide feedback. I mean, I don't know if I have time to go through this with you now, but I think most of you know that would not be it would be a very ineffective response, because not only, I mean, not only are you making a rash judgment here, but you're not ensuring a commitment to a capacity for improvement and teamwork and other competencies that you hope to demonstrate here. Tell the professor you understand that you missed some opportunities during the exercise. I don't, I mean, again, you can make your own judgment here, but I think this, might not be, it's probably ineffective here too, because, you want to ensure that you talk about what happened. Ask your classmate about how you could improve your performance for the future. So obviously this shows a capacity for improvement, teamwork, and sounds to me like, this is a very effective response. Again, explaining to your professor why you were satisfied with your performance, that's also ineffective. Ask your classmate if they'd be willing to practice role-playing in advance of your next exercise. And that sounds effective as well. Ask your classmate not to bring up the negative feedback during your debriefing session. Again, this is very ineffective, because it's not only asking your classmate to, withhold certain information that would allow you to benefit and to improve, but it's also not showing that you really have that capacity to receive negative feedback and to seek improvement. Okay, so again, the most pressing issue in the scenario, your classmate gave negative feedback about your performance. What do you do about it? Is this your problem or theirs? So should you just ignore the feedback and defend your performance, like responses 1, 4, and 6 talk about? And again, this is going to be rash and judgmental. Remember, you have to consider all parties involved in the scenario, including your unsatisfied classmate. Though you do not have to admit that you failed your performance, you should do something proactive to avoid negative feedback in the future and show initiative for improvement, which is why responses 3 and 5 seem like very effective reactions. Okay. And this is the kind of question you're going to be getting. Here's another one. You're leading a study group with some classmates. When two classmates begin arguing about one of the course topics, the argument's tense, but stays on topic until one student insults the other's religion, and then the other responds by insulting the first student's intelligence. Again, you're going to be presented with a series of responses, and you're going to have to rate the effectiveness of each one. Beginning a discussion about the importance of tolerance for different religious beliefs. Ask another classmate to diffuse the argument. Let the two classmates handle the situation themselves, as you are not directly involved in the argument. Tell the two classmates that personal attacks are not acceptable and they need to stop insulting each other. Refocus the discussion on course content. Ask the two classmates to resolve their issue privately. Tell the study group to take a short break and speak to the two classmates privately, okay? And when you're considering these various responses and whether they are effective, ineffective, very effective or very ineffective, you also have to, draw upon the competencies that they're, asking about here, and also focus on the vulnerable parties that are at stake. Okay. So who's most affected in this scenario? Is it the majority of the class whose study has been interrupted? Is it you whose authority has been undermined? No, it's the two conflicting students who managed to hurt one another's feelings by throwing personal insults at each other. As a future physician, you're going to need to demonstrate leadership as well as objectivity. You need to address their conflict, but not embarrass them any further, which is why response 7 really gets the highest rating. Choosing to help your classmates in private is a sign you care about their confidentiality and their personal feelings. It's a show of compassion. Though response number 1 may seem like a good choice, don't forget that the other student's intelligence was also insulted in front of the whole class. The other responses, 2, 3, 5, and 6, demonstrate indifference or fear to take on responsibility for those around you. And response number 4 is really just an assertive reply, but it's lacking action and compassion towards the vulnerable party. Now, again, you're not really typing out these justifications, and you're not recording these justifications, but these are what you have to sort of go through in your mind to really kind of determine whether something is effective, very effective, ineffective, or very ineffective, okay? And, again, these are non-cognitive judgment skills. Just try to avoid jumping to a conclusion. Consider each viewpoint and its consequences. As I mentioned before, you can use the same rating for more than one response. Think through your analysis of the options presented and focus on the core competencies that are being tested and have those competencies in the front of your mind when responding to those prompts. All right. I want to thank everybody for coming today. Because, we are a small office, we're not going to be able to provide any sort of one-on-one help to prepare you for either the CASPER exam or the preview exam. We will upload the recording of this presentation today to our Hunter Pre-Health Advising YouTube channel. But I think the most important resources for you are going to be for CASPER, to go and take that practice exam as many times as you can. Make sure you register early. Also, I highly, highly, highly recommend first viewing the webinar, the recording of the webinar that is on that site for the 25 exam, okay? Because they did make a lot of changes from last year to this year. They do have very good, explanations, and you can also, hear in on the Q&A of those who were actually, turning into that webinar, and that may be helpful to you too. For a preview, obviously, it's really, really important to do the practice exam on the AAMC site and just review those competencies on the AAMC site too, under Anatomy of an Applicant. Make sure you really understand them. All right, so I very much appreciate everyone here. Oh, I know I told you, let me just share. I'm going to share for those of you who may not have the link to the assignment, I'm going to share that now, just so you have it. And this is for the PAP 1003. This is the reflection assignment submission form. Okay. All right, so let me share this. Okay. So no one needs to take either one of the CASPER or the preview exams if the schools they're applying to do not require it. This, seminar is obviously for students who, do need to take the exams. And so, what I always ask is check the requirements of the schools that you're applying to. They will say right there, they require a CASPER score or a AAMC preview score, or they may recommend it. Okay, even if they recommend it, we always say take it. Okay, it's another way of assessing you. It shows those programs that you care enough to take those extra steps to follow through on something they thought was a good idea to do. Okay, all right, great to see everyone. Good luck with everything, and again, this recording will be on our YouTube channel, so you will be able to access it again. And make sure you go to the Acuity Insights site. Make sure you review their seminar, the recording webinar, as well as take those practice exams. That's what they're there for. Okay? All right. Have a good day, everyone.